Hello, Internet. I'm sorry this is going up so late. I forgot it was Monday and I was supposed to do a question and queries, and everything just got a little bit out of my control. So I'm going to ask you a question now. So today's question is going to be related to book reading habits, and I'm curious as to how many of you actually read this versus how many of you don't. So my question revolves around this idea of a novel having poetry, having prophecy, having songs, having short stories within the text of the book. So, like in Fangirl, how a lot of people complain that there was a lot of fan fiction written in large chunks in the middle of Fangirl. There are several books in which there will be entire song verses that are made up, told in the middle of the verse, large chunks of poetry put in the middle of the verse. I'm thinking currently of the Pluto Project, in which the boy talks a lot about poetry, so there are large chunks of poetry within the novel of the book. There are tons of fantasy, urban fantasy, and just in general fiction that have prophecies in which there are long lines of prophecy and such put in the book. So my question is whether or not you as a reader actually read every single word of that song, of that short story, of that poem, or do you more skim it and flip back to it if it is relevant to the later context of the story? Because while I like to read every word that I see in front of me, when it comes to, say, prophecy, song lyrics, and poetry within my books, I am more likely to skim. I don't remember word for word very well. So when it comes to prophecies in my books, I just like to remember, prophecy was given on page 102. If it comes back to relevant where I need to figure it out and puzzle it together, I'll just flip back. Which is rather concerning to me when I think of me being a main character in any story, because usually main characters in stories are told the prophecy one solitary time and somehow remember word for word what happened later on. And I'm just like, that would never happen to me. Like, somebody can give me directions, and if you don't write that stuff down, I don't remember what you said the second after you say it. You could be like, turn 2 lefts, then go right. You'll come across a corridor with 3 brown doors, choose the green one. And I would be like, you said turn right, then 2 lefts. There are going to be 3 black doors and you want me to go through the yellow one. I don't remember, word for word very well. I can understand and remember vague ideas, vague, concepts of what it was going around and the implications that are made, but I never remember word for word. And I have tried my hardest. I will read word for word like I have done before. Well, I'll read these things word for word, and I simply, they don't go into my head properly. If you are not telling me a story, I don't remember what you are talking about, so I tend to skim parts in my book that aren't specific story. On audiobook, I'm fine. If you read it to me, I'm usually okay and good. But if I have to make the conscious effort to read, say, the Sorting Hat song, I ain't reading that bullshit, because that's too much effort on me. If I really need to go back and flip through that information, they make reference to the Sorting Hat once again in Harry Potter, I'll just go and look it back up to make a comparison. I will take that extra time because I just can't be bothered to do a deep dive into this poetry, into this prophecy, into anything else within a novel. If it is a small short story within another larger story, I am perfectly fine because I understand stories well and I love stories. So if you were telling me a story within a story, I'm a-okay. But if you're trying to give me poetry, if you're trying to give me some prophecy stuff, if you're trying to give me some sort of riddly thing that I'm supposed to try to remember and figure out later, I am not going to remember. I'm just going to tab that page, flip back to it when it's important. And I guess that kind of makes me like a bad reader, because there are certain portions that I will prefer to skim because I cannot be bothered. But I just want to know, how many of you actually enjoy when that is a part of your book and read word for word those portions? Or are you more like me and you kind of skim and don't really pay that much attention to those portions unless they show significant relevance later? Because it's just a thing that I do. I'm not quite sure why, but I understand that I'm the type of person that I can read a quote given by something and I will understand absolutely 0 words of that quote. Like, just saying things at me does not work. You gotta take some time to give me some story and some like background to stuff. Otherwise, I'm just not gonna be bothered, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I cannot read out loud very well, because if I read out loud, I just read words. I don't understand the meaning of those words. So it comes to the same thing when it comes to like poems and prophecies and all of that sort of stuff within my text. I will just read a bunch of words, but I can't really comprehend them well. I don't know why that is. Like, I don't make sense to myself sometimes. But my question really is about this whole idea of whether or not you like when these different like forms of medium are within your story, and whether or not you read every little bit of it, or you're more of a skimmer and just skim over those small chunks of like song lyrics and poetry and that sort of shenanigans if they're within your story. Or are you one of those, I will read every single word and I will study religiously every single word that's in this book. I don't care what it is. Because let me admit, I ain't reading the lyrics to your dumb song if you decide to give me a 2-minute song in this book. I ain't reading it. I'm gonna skip through it because I don't got time for none of your song lyric nonsense. I don't like it. I especially, like, this happens a lot in fan fiction. They'll put in, like, song lyrics sometimes. If there's any scene with music, sometimes, like, fan fiction writers will put in song lyrics, and I'm like, why would you think I wanted to read this nonsense? No, skip. So, I just wanted to ask your opinion on that. What type of reader are you when it comes to these things? I'm not really big into poetry as is. Like, if I enjoy poetry, it has to be spoken word. Like, you gotta speak this poetry to me. Otherwise, I ain't paying attention. Like, if I have to read it, it better be a story format. Otherwise, I don't understand a word of anything that isn't written in a story format. That's just the person I am. So I want to know if anyone is also similar or in the same spectrum as me, or are you on the other side? Are you like, you understand the deep depths of every like lyric and poetry stuff, and that's just what you go for? So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click all those bunny buddies down below, and goodbye, Internet.